Est-ce que ChatGPT va me voler mon travail?
ChatGPT steal my job. People are wondering this. Am I going to be unemployed because of AI? As a professional illustrator, will I still have work? So these questions have all been asked. So as professionals, these are our livelihoods, our jobs. And this is how we contribute value to society. So obviously when there's new development in technology, questions arise. And this is why we wanted to have this session today. I wanted to maybe run a little poll and see if you're afraid of all this. So let me start the poll. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce our speakers, Professor Asma Sbai. So I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and maybe explain what she will be covering today. The floor is yours. Hi, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. It's a pleasure for me to be here for this webinar today. I wanted to thank the Online Safety Group for this opportunity to speak to you, give you my point of view on whether or not AI will one day eventually steal humans' jobs. I hope not, but we're going to cover this in our presentation today that I'm going to share with you right now. So let's see, share screen. I hope that you can all see my screen, my presentation. I'm going to start by reintroducing myself. I'm Professor Asma Sbai. I'm an IT professor at the Faculty of Medicine and Pharmacy in Marrakech. I'm a lecturer, a researcher in the field of AI applied to health. And here you've got a couple of pictures of my country. I come from Morocco. I come from Agadir, more specifically, and currently I'm working in Marrakech. I think most of you will have heard of Marrakech and has been visited by so many celebrities. There are quite a few monuments and very interesting museums. So here I just wanted to show you this to encourage you to maybe come visit us and visit Morocco if you get that opportunity. So to come back to our topic for today, well, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of what is AI, a little definition, then we can talk about how companies use AI and if this can decrease employment, and then we'll cover briefly advantages, pros and cons of AI versus humans. So everything started long ago. So technologies that touch on AI started maybe in the 40s, and the word AI appeared in 1956 during the Dartmouth conference. And this came with many other data transformations like big data and material evolutions, technologies, IT. And all these changes in the way we were working led to new jobs being created. So you have data analysts or AI programmers and things like that. So the initial goal of the development of such intelligence was to make repetitive tasks easier so that the human could innovate and could make better use of their imagination. Some people, however, see AI as a threat for jobs and worry that they could increase social inequalities. So in 2023, AI can generate answers and feedbacks that almost imitate perfectly the answers that humans could give. So this means we need to create more security measures. So let's define the three main fields of AI that are often mentioned. Some users mix some of these, so let me touch upon each one of them. I will try and stay quite clear. So we've got machine learning. What is machine learning? Well, that's algorithms that are made to learn from specific data. So it's given sets of data that are labeled, and it will try and learn and find the common points, elements between these sets of data. So anytime we give it new data, it will try and categorize it and label it specifically one way or the other compared to what it's already been fed previously. Second case that we often talk about, that's not the same thing as machine learning, is deep learning. So deep learning is a subcategory of machine learning. And the strength of this deep learning is the fact that it can learn from data that is not categorized or labeled, what we call non-structured data. And finally, we've got generative AI. So these three are the three categories of AI that we often talk about. So AI in 2023, this generative AI, it has a capacity for algorithms to create new information that didn't exist previously. So this could be textual information, graphic information, so pictures or audio tracks. So for example, you've got ChatGPT for written text, DALL-E for graphics and pictures. So that's the three different types of things, and that was generative AI. So what are the applications, the uses of AI in the industry? Well, we have all the category of things that are personalized recommendations. I could tell you about Amazon, who uses AI to recommend products to its customers, depending on their search and purchase histories. A second example would be AdWords, Google AdWords, who uses AI to optimize their publicity ad and marketing campaigns. And a third example for airline companies who use AI algorithms to adjust prices for flights, depending on several factors such as demand, the time, the day, the weather, information in some countries. A couple other examples, maybe. You've got financial institutions who use AI algorithms to identify and prevent fraudulent transactions. And one final example is Walmart, who uses AI to optimize the way they manage stock and increase efficiency of its supply chain. So these were examples for big companies, but AI can also be used by SMEs. And this can be done through the option of using APIs, just like OpenAI, who can stimulate innovation. OpenAI's APIs, and this includes ChatGPT 3.5, have been made available in March, I think, were made available in March. So anyone can use these tools. And so for GPT-4, that API, I think, is available, but not to everyone yet. You need to specifically register on a waiting list to then gain access. So when you add capabilities to AI, to apps, it makes things more affordable and accessible. So it's democratizing all access, and companies could now focus on improving existing models, for example, rather than creating something from scratch. So they could use data that is made available to them and make use of that however they wish to do so. They can use them in different scenarios, different contexts for their own goals. Another thing I would like to add is that ChatGPT recently modified their data conservation policy. They will not store data for more than 30 days. So they won't use this data to train or retrain their models. And this reduces risks around privacy, data privacy. But and the risks linked to these issues. You can also, so the app, the API, OpenAI, also allows companies to invoice for the use of their products, which means that this clarifies questions of licenses and authorizations to use certain things, because we need more clarifications around these different points. So this allows companies to invoice the use of their own services. So on this next slide, what I tried to do was to categorize the types of tasks that we do on an everyday basis, on a daily basis, in companies, for example, or in our daily lives. And we're trying to answer two questions. So will AI steal our jobs? Or should we be replaced by AI? So rather than these questions here, I wanted to answer two questions. You've got a task that you do daily. And the first question I would like you to ask yourself is, could we do this task in an automated manner based on certain calculations, rules? Is there a link between cause and consequence? Are there mathematic principles behind it? So then that leads to a yes or a no. And then you can ask the next question. Is this task, is this job prone to a zero tolerance margin of error or low tolerance? Is there yes? Is that yes or a no? And so then you have this grid and you find where you sit in the table. So can this task be done by AI? Or, for example, in this first one, by traditional computer programs and other technologies, mainly for process automation. So that's the first category. In this category, I think we would have certain operations for negotiations, bank transfers, money transfers. So humans are participate on a technical level, but this can be done by traditional computer programs. Second category, if you answer yes to the first question and no to the second one, so we've got a second category where you can use AI. And in that case, this only touches on certain jobs, certain tasks, such as recommendations, advice, web content recommendations, preferences for the users. So AI leaves a margin of interpretation. So there is no zero tolerance for errors. You can have some errors. Why? Well, simply because apologies, your interpreter cannot hear the speaker anymore. So in this third category, if you've answered no and then yes, you get a category where only humans can do this. So this could be positions for leaders, politicians. So a position or job or task that are focused on objective, but also you need human process of thought behind this. So non-automated processes, and they would have non-reversible consequences. So sometimes we would have automatic responses, and some directors of companies would give us answers that may seem obvious, but they're linked to a whole human process. And so here we would need to act with bearing in mind all the different things that we have to take into account, and these cannot be turned into a simple algorithm. And the risk would also be with AI that no one would then be responsible for a decision that was being made. Whereas with humans, someone has to be able to be held accountable. And finally, in our fourth category, are tasks where you've got a mix of AI and humans. It's an area where both AI and humans could kind of fight over the tasks and the jobs. For example, arts. This collaboration between the machine and the human works really well. For example, creation-assisted, AI-assisted creation. So there's a shared competence here. So, lost jobs, preserved jobs, will history repeat itself? Well, at the start of the 20th century, there were industrial processes that were introduced, and this led to a lot of worry around job security, loss of jobs, unemployment. This didn't happen because workers were moved to other jobs. They kept the work that they had, and maybe they were moved to different skills. So they were managing the machines and worked on managing line productions. So we can give AI repetitive tasks, but still use experienced workers' skills for specific interventions when need be. And this is very beneficial for companies because it can be really expensive to train new employees. Then we've also got lost jobs, but we've also got created jobs. So, for example, if we want to use AI efficiently, we need new human skills. We will need new types of talent, new employees, for example, for managing information, adapting the objectives, the goals, because these vary from one company to the other. So you might need specific analysts, and you need people who are capable of using AI for the company's goals. And we've seen an increase in the need for these types of people, of workers. So I think I've not lost you. We can see that there's a comparison that we can make between human intelligence and AI. So in human intelligence, we've got emotional intelligence. We understand social issues. We're also creative. Human intelligence can think outside of the box and can adapt to new situations and contexts. However, artificial intelligence is fast, is efficient, especially for repetitive tasks, because these can be automated. It's very precise, it's very coherent, and doesn't make any mistakes. However, if you look at human intelligence, we say mistake is a human thing. We can also get tired. We've got certain limits to our capacities, capabilities, whereas AI is limited by its adaptability, its specialization. It's a low intelligence. It can only do certain things in a specific environment. It's not very creative, and it can't freely think. And finally, it does not have any emotional intelligence and doesn't have much empathy. So AI has quite a few pros for companies, but there are certain risks. There's that of security, for example. AI algorithms can be biased because they're trained on specific sets of data that may be biased themselves, and this can lead to unfair decisions, discrimination. So we and companies need to make sure they have diverse representative sets of data. AI uses a lot of data, and companies need to make sure that private data is not part of those sets of data, because if they collect and stock and store all these sets of personal data, these still need to be protected. They need to be stored securely and follow specific regulations. AI systems can have non-intentional consequences if they're not properly tested. And finally, they can be hard to understand, which can lead to a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability, which could be a risk for companies. So companies would need to be sure there are clear explanations behind the decisions that are made using AI. So to have an efficient AI, we have to focus on the quality of data. We need a collaboration between data scientists, engineers, experts in various fields, be it security, networks, legal, psychology. We need a collaboration that is crucial for a successful implementation of AI. And finally, we need to take into all these ethical questions into account. They need to be at the center of the development of any development and any new AI. For example, you can think about data privacy and ethical issues so that we can get a responsible ethical AI. So now that I'm getting to the end of my presentation, do you still think AI can fully replace humans? I think we still need to invest in AI. We need to recognize its value and where the value lies. It's not because it's not that it's going to replace humans, but it's its capacity to work with humans to improve our world. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please go ahead. Thank you very much. Now we're going to start with questions. What we could do is that the person who asks a question or wants to ask a question raises their hand. There's a little sign at the bottom of your screen and with the little face called reactions. And once you've selected that, you can raise your hand. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. And then we will give you the floor. I see we have two questions, Regine Bonka and Mohamed. We're going to give the floor to the ladies first. Hello, everyone. I'm Regine Bonka. I'm from Cameroon. I'm a legal expert. I was interested in this webinar because I had a discussion recently with an expert in cybersecurity, and he was telling me, well, first of all, thank you, Professor, for your very interesting presentation. My question is still linked to what he was saying. He was saying we need to be careful, especially as legal practitioners, because he was telling us about ChatGPT, and he was saying this AI is of high quality, and it's going to gradually eliminate and destroy quite a few jobs. And I kept telling him that that's not going to happen. We've had various developments in technology, but we've always needed humans. And he said, well, we've stopped giving certain contracts to employees because using ChatGPT, we've managed to reduce time. The AI was quicker than the employees. So, Professor, in spite of your presentation, do you still agree that AI isn't a risk to salaried employees at least in the short term? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Well, I'm wondering, were these employees actually fired because this company managed to get the work done using ChatGPT? And ChatGPT is a program that allows you to generate text based on a prompt that it is given. And so what I'm wondering is these people, what were they doing? What was their job description? What kind of work did they do so that we can say that they were replaced by ChatGPT? I didn't ask that question, that's true. But based on my profession, for example, he was saying we won't need legal experts because thanks to ChatGPT, we can write contracts and draft legal documents. He also said that they had students, interns, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but that they managed to to write down several documents using ChatGPT. And I wonder how are they allowed to use this? I mean, it was just a conversation we had. Well, what we need to understand is that ChatGPT is based on a GPT algorithm. The one that is available freely at the moment and freely accessible is GPT 3.5, and the latest version is GPT 4. And it's that version 3.5 to which we all have access has only been trained with data up to 2020 or 2021. So not everything is included in that. So a person is not trained well enough, doesn't have enough information, and uses ChatGPT 3.5, it may be that they will get good results. But you will still need someone who would proofread the contract, see if it's adequate, if it corresponds to the actual legal text, the law, what is at present the law in the country where it is going to be applied. So if you don't have any prior knowledge of the field in which the text, I think it can be quite dangerous. Up till now, we can't, I'd say, you can't fully get rid of the human, even if AI can do certain things. Another example that I often give my students is that when you develop an AI program for writing certain things, you won't launch the program and trust it entirely and trust the result 100%. So the result of the program, when it is developed by the researcher, the company, isn't 100% guaranteed. It won't necessarily detect the tumor that you're trying to detect. There's a 98%, 99% accuracy maximum. There will never be 100% accuracy. You still need a doctor, a specialist next to the AI who will confirm the diagnosis that has been made or proposed by the AI. So you still need a human who can check, who can control the results that are provided by AI. So I think we're not at risk at the moment. The humans still need to train. There's a risk for people who are currently training because they might learn to be lazy if they start relying on generative AI tools to create the text or create reports, and they are going to lose certain skills. And these are skills that need to be worked on constantly, need to be maintained, you know, writing, redacting, providing reports. I don't write for a month or two. As soon as I start writing again, it's not going to be great. So I think that's where the risk lies for universities, for current students. So I don't want to be mean, but it might make them a bit stupid, you know? Like if they don't want to self-train and work on their own skills. So that's where I think there's a problem. But I hope that answers your question. Yes, thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much for this question, Régine Bonca. Now, Mohamed Lami Keita, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. As you can see, my name is Mohamed Keita. I'm an engineer and an IT expert, an entrepreneur, and I work in a university. When I saw the theme of this session, I was very interested, and I really hoped we could talk about this topic, because in the environment I'm working in currently, I think that AI has a huge social impact that we cannot neglect in different debates, because it's very important to understand the impact of AI and to think together about solutions to avoid, the complete marginalization of human beings. I'm a developer. I have two companies, one in telematics and another in IT engineering. And I'm seeing students who come out of university, and I want to really be able to produce products that I can sell to my clients. I'm also developing an application for football championships. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this requires a very big database, because we're talking about all the information about football that's available. So I'm a developer, but I really like to use the resources that my students present with me. I want to be able to use different technologies to be able to provide a secure interface. So to do this, I use 6 students until I started using ChatGPT 3. And after that, I realized that everything that my students did in a week, I could actually make the IA do in less than 30 minutes, depending on the specifications. And I could have codes that I could really control and readjust at the end of those 30 minutes and have, an end result that was completely acceptable. And so my backend and the efforts that were provided by ChatGPT replaced these students in my work. And I think that's an issue, because in truth, if I didn't have the university side of this experience, I would say that I would be really contributing to the reduction of the use of human competence, because obviously ChatGPT is going to cost me a lot less than these 6 students that I would be employed for a month. And so as an entrepreneur, the ChatGPT option becomes a lot more attractive and allows me to deliver a lot faster, instead of using these students who have perhaps more limited competencies and skills, and who actually cost me a lot of money. So I'm not really trying to ask a question here, but it's a state of fact that I think is very important to take into account for all the actors in AI. And I quite appreciated the reaction of Italy, who decided to limit all activities linked to ChatGPT in Italy until we're able to really assess what the impact of this IA is going to have. And so we need to really plan accompanying measures that allow us to really see how this is going to work out. Because we're losing control of what these artificial intelligences are doing. So we can't predict their reactions. We're being surprised by the evolutions that we're seeing. So we're being positively surprised, but these are going to have profound impacts, in terms of security, in terms of the environment, in terms of society. So it's really important to be able to take these impacts in count. And so I wanted to really maybe align myself with the person who spoke before, because I do think that AI can replace humans, because it is history repeating itself, but it's history repeating itself in a different form. It's much faster and it's much more dangerous, I believe, especially on a social level. So that is what I wanted to say. That's my contribution. I think that we need to keep the conversation open. We really need to pull everyone's attention to this topic, and especially people in the sector, to make sure that we lose performance in human terms. Imagine, for example, that my students know about the ChatGPT. Well, I'm going to receive answers that are not predictable, that don't come from them. And I can't really do anything except give them a grade that they don't deserve, because they've produced something that is perfectly coherent. So that is going to kill skills, it's going to kill human intelligence. Because people don't want to provide this maximum effort. So I'm also responsible for market passation. And so I'm controlling the activities that are carried out on the ground. And so imagine that I perhaps was able to ask the right question to ChatGPT, and then this AI generated the report that I was supposed to write over the course of weeks. I'm going to, send it to my boss, but really it's not my effort, it's not my work. I don't know if this really answers or is on topic, but this result is not mine. And am I really going to keep providing all that effort when I can just not do that? So here's my concern. Thank you for this contribution. It's very rich, and I really agree with everything that you're saying. But what I'd like to add is that's our role as teachers, especially at university level, to raise awareness amongst our students about the risks that are linked to, adopt AIs blindly. So, for example, you were able to optimize the work of 6 students into, a couple of hours of work. But, this is linked to your background. You're a developer. You have these skills. So everything that ChatGPT is going to give you, you're going to be able to look at critically and modify it if it's necessary. So, and you're going to be able to modify the prompts that you're giving to ChatGPT in an intelligent way because you have experience, because you have the background that is going to help you to use this AI. And so learning and awareness that's being raised at university level is very important for life in general. And that's especially the case linked to what you said about putting in place certain barriers for the development of any AI. So to be able to control and check the results presented by this intelligence, like how far can it go? Are we able to control it? So yes, I completely agree with you. I think it's a big risk. But I also think that human beings are capable of adapting. There are a lot of people who are raising awareness on this topic, on everything that's happening currently. Unfortunately, even though Elon Musk and many scientists and industrial actors wrote a letter to request a pause for 6 months. It was not accepted because just after that, a lot of companies launched different AIs. So ChatGPT really surfed on that advertising wave. But there are also other AIs that are coming out onto the market and are also available to our students. I would also like to take the example of plagiarism, because we have students at universities a few years ago. I think they could copy and cut from the internet without anti-plagiarism programs. Now all universities have access to these kind of programs, and we can check for plagiarism. And I'm sure that in a few months, a few years, we will have programs that are anti-AI, so anti-generative AI programs, to be able to check if certain content has been created by humans or by AIs. I do believe that there's a university in the States that has produced a program that can check if a text has been generated by ChatGPT or not. And so I think that we will see in the coming months or years programs and tools that are going to allow us to check whether this content has been created by an AI or a human being. Thank you very much, Mr. Keita, for everything that you shared with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Keita and Professor Asma. Now we would like one last question, and then we will move on to our next panelist. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. I have a question, and I would also like to make a comment. Firstly, my question is, I would like to know what is our responsibility in terms of regulation? When we talk about regulation, or at least the regulation of the internet, is multi-partite. It's not just the governments, it's not just big companies, it's not just application developers. We're all involved. And so I wanted to know, what is our role? What part do we have to play in regulation? That was my question. And I also have a comment, maybe as an answer to what Mr. Keita has said. These days, there are a lot of AIs, but their use is not compulsory, or it's not the last resort. So currently there's a tool called GPT-0, something like that, which can be used to see if a text has been generated by an artificial intelligence or not. But sometimes you can tell that if you give content to the app, and I tried it myself, I created a text, and the app actually said that the text had been created by an AI. And so if someone else had been there, they'd have thought that my text would have been created by an AI. And it's what the professor said. If she'd used that tool to test my contribution, it would have told her that it was made by an AI when actually it was my text. And so I can say that this app has not been trained sufficiently to really make the difference. And my other comment had to do with what Mr. Keita said, linked to students. As a student, I think many of us, especially in Africa, have a tendency to adapt these new technologies and not to create them. And that is another problem for us, which really fits in with the way that we live. So we tend to use solutions that have been implemented elsewhere and apply them to our problems instead of creating solutions that really fit with our own problems. So Professor Asma said, like we all know, the APIs and ChatGPT, etc., are open source, so they're open to everyone. But I would have a suggestion for Mr. Keita. If you take your students and conduct a seminar with them, a training program, talk about this tool, teach them about this open source code, and ask them to produce something on the basis of this algorithm, which is open source. I am convinced that what they will produce for you will be more interesting and will be able to perform better than what you will have found under ChatGPT. And there's another problem, that our African languages We're talking about languages that are not necessarily used in the digital world. Why? Well, because we do not produce, like I said, someone who speaks Hausa, someone who speaks Swahili or Lingala, as I do. I'm from the DRC. We're not producing this technology. And then we complain that we don't have tools that are available in our languages, or that we don't have the power, the possibility to access these tools. So we wait for someone else to create and we consume, and then we complain. And I think that our reaction maybe should be more productive than simple consumers. And so what I want to say is that we should make sure that ChatGPT does not use our work, but we should be able to use it to do whatever we want to achieve. And so I encourage all teachers and students. I'm actually part of a group that is working on a model based on Swahili, and that also responds to questions in Swahili. And so I encourage everyone to work on new technologies. And in terms of regulations, I hope that Professor Asma will have an answer on that topic. But my position is that we should use these tools and develop our own. Thank you. Thank you, Atas, for this contribution. So I think it fits with what I said to Mr. Keita. It's about responsibility. So we teachers must raise awareness amongst our students about the risks of adopting these technologies blindly. So it's true that we find ourselves in an era in which things are developing extremely fast. But we still need to orient our students as best we can and to keep training ourselves as well. You know, when you become a professor at university, that doesn't mean you stop learning and stop challenging yourself to be able to pass on the maximum possible information to our students, to really be able to teach them about the risks of what's coming and what's happening around us. It's true that, unfortunately, on the African continent, we tend to be consumers rather than creators, and that's unfortunate. But it's also linked to mentalities. I know that most of the researchers, I'll talk about my country, they are making a huge amount of effort to really come up with new contributions, if you can say it like that. It's also good that us as Africans, we can learn several different languages. I don't know if it's cultural or what, but here in Morocco, you have people who are going to be speaking Arabic, French, English, Spanish, and Arabic dialects, as well as Tamazight, so Berber language. And we even have a research center, a Tamazight research center in Morocco. And in this center, they're very interested in not only everything that's linked to literature, history, for the Berber people, but also technology. So I know several students, especially at the University of Agadir, who are working on programs in Tamazight. So it's similar to what you're doing in your own language. And so I think that the future is not all black. We can be optimistic, and we do need to keep trying hard to maybe leave this posture as consumers. So this is work that we each need to do. individually. This needs to come from us. And we need to really try to do our best to transmit that to our students, to our co-workers, etc. In terms of regulation, here in Morocco, we're actually talking about it again because we do have a national AI center. And so amongst like the topics that are the most talked about is regulation, it's ethics. And so we're really talking about these topics. And it's true that now with programs that are able to detect AI-generated content, it's not necessarily well developed, and that's normal. Because, well, ChatGPT has just been launched. It was only launched in October, November, I think. And so we do need a bit more time to be able to train models and programs so they can actually detect in a way that is trustworthy and reliable. So I think I hope I answered your question. But if you need a contact for the Tmazik Center, I would be delighted to share it with you because I hope it would be beneficial for you and for them. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I might contact you afterwards. Not a problem. I'll send you my email. I'll put it in the chat box. And like that, if anyone else wants to continue the discussion afterwards, you have my email. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's it, posted. Thank you very much, Professor Asma. I've seen that there are 2 more questions, but unfortunately, our 2 other speakers still need to speak. So what I suggest is that you leave your comments in the chat box, and like that, Professor Asma can answer you whilst our other speakers can begin their presentations. I would like to ask you a question now. According to you, what would be the worst scenario, the worst case scenario if AIs continue to develop? And actually, I have a poll that that you can see here up on the screen. So the questions here, based on your experience, what is the worst case scenario in terms of AI? So first option, machines are going to take control, maybe like in the Terminator films. And then second scenario,
ayant des métiers peu qualifiés seront soit au chômage, soit encore moins bien payés.
Would it be possible that people are going to be less well paid and job conditions are going to degrade? And third scenario, so I'll give you 1 minute to be able to answer this question because I can see that only 11 people have answered. So I'll give you another minute. And in the meantime, Rethabile Tsephe, who's based in the US, will be giving us her perspective. We have 13 people out of 37, so we're still missing 21 participants in the poll. I'll give you a few more seconds. Don't be shy. You need to answer the poll. So I will count down from 20 and then close the poll so that then Rethabile can take the floor. So 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, So for those asking where the poll is, normally it should appear on your screen. 15, 14, 13. For those of you who can't see the poll, there's actually a little plus button at the bottom, and you should be able to access the poll via there. Thank you very much for this comment. So it's been 2 minutes 45, so now I'm going to close the poll. And before closing it, I'm going to share my screen so you can see the results. So as you can see, 23 people answered. And so 74% of people think that the gap between the rich and the poor is going to increase. And then we also have the Terminator scenario, and finally the third one. And so without any further ado, I'm going to leave the floor to Rethabile Tsephe, who is going to talk about the link between human psychology and AIs. So she's going to answer the question, will AIs take power over humans, or will they become the nightmare of the people who created them? Rethabile, the floor is yours.
Rethabile, the floor is yours.
Sorry, she's connected, but I don't know why she's not answering. Maybe she has a problem with her computer. In order to not waste time, what we do is that okay, she's coming. She was logged out.
Hi, hello. Online safety. I was locked out a few minutes ago. Can I ask if am I on so that I can start with my presentation?
Yes, Rethabile, you can start. Rethabile, are you still there? Let me, please just a minute. She said that she cannot hear me. And say,
Thank you so much. Can I please ask before I start, am I audible? Can you all hear me?
yes.
Okay, I'm going to share something real quick. Sorry. Okay, here it is. Okay, so if you look at the screen, I'll be talking about AI in the workplace in the context focusing on the psychological element of it, focusing on the human error part of it. And I'm a cyberspace researcher. Just to introduce myself briefly, I'm a cyberspace researcher and I'm specializing in cyber psychology, cyber mental health, and cyber disorders. And then last year I have a brief. I have an issue brief that was published at the Observer Research Foundation in India last year in May. So there's a lot, I research a lot on the psychological element of things. And when we talk of AI, a lot of us, I think it's because we get into panic mood where a lot of things, where a lot of things caused by fear get into the place. I'm so sorry. I see someone saying that there's an echo. I also hear an echo, but can I please ask if online safety can help me out with that? Okay, so the other thing, so starting off, I'm going to focus on different work industries. Like we have your security intel, and I'll focus on the mining industry. So with the mining industry, we have with the mining industry, what we have we have before workers get inside the mining environment, there's a security personnel that they have to go through, and a lot of times we have the mining have laws and regulations that govern them, and they have objects or items that are not allowed to enter into the premise. But you would find that often some security personnel's take advantage of that, and because if it's someone you know or if it's someone you may have a relation with, they'll just bypass it, and then you enter with an, let me say, to a shop, and something happens, conflict happens, and then you end up using that object that you were not supposed to get inside the premise with. So that's the first point when I'm presenting the psychological element of it, that a lot of times we bypass or we forget to stay with the regulations of the different job environments that we are into. And then the other example I would like to reflect on is this happened to me, you know. So last year I was working for a government ministry, and my job was a bit sensitive because I would have to travel with like military personnel to do my job. And then other than that, you'd find that the military personnel, while I'm on duty, they're drinking alcohol, meaning that the focus is no longer, meaning that the focus is a bit mixed up because they need to guard me while I do my job, and the next thing they're drinking. So think in the workplace that could have and then the other, again, I'll focus on the job I did last year, whereby I would be driven around to do the missions that we are on, but a lot of times you'll find that the drivers drink and drive, you know, and such things. Because let me say, in Africa, we understand that drinking is part of the culture, and a lot of times, and a lot of workplaces, drinking has become a norm. Like people drink while on duty, and in this instance, I've seen a driver drive us around and almost cause an accident because of drinking and driving. And yes, we talked about it, but it was never really addressed at a senior level. So things like that, when I think of AI, and when I think of AI in the workplace, I'm like, I feel like if the human part of us are deliberately causing unnecessary conflict or unnecessary panic, then it means that something is wrong. We need to look at ourselves and say, what is it that we are doing wrong? And I don't know, I think a lot of us can relate. You guys, we come from different workplaces. I know that you may relate that sometimes office politics gets into the way, as we all know, especially I believe in all workplaces, we have what we call office politics, and things like that get into the way of productivity. And you see that, and sometimes you find that an assignment or a task that was supposed to take a day would take a week because someone in between decided not to do his or her job because they are not in talking terms with A or B in different departments, you know. So that's the other element that we sometimes bypass. And when I also think of AI, it's like perhaps AI may do a better job because we humans are failing each and every single day. We walk into government ministries, we walk into private entities, we talk of small business, but there's always a lack of professionalism in between, and that alone causes a lot of backlog. I don't know, I'm so sorry guys, but I hear the echo again. Can I please be assisted with that? And then on the other part, we have research and development. With research and development, we see the amount of time it takes for writing business proposals or research papers. You know, we see how when left to humans, a lot of clash comes in because we now put in the element of ego in our professional work instead of collaborating effectively. And then when you think of AI and think of ChatGPT, I'm thinking, well, that really isn't a bad idea after all, you know. If left to a human being, this is the results that I'm getting. And we look at the transport industry that I talked about briefly, where we look at simple things like road accidents, you know. Simple things like, in my case, I know that the transport department of the ministry I was working for didn't really follow up with the complaint we put in that the drivers drink and drive, and an accident almost happened and nothing was done about it, you know, because the whole of last year, the same routine was happening. We're talking of the military personnel drinking on the job, meaning that the focus is now getting limited. They can't really do their job on a sober mind. That for us was a bit... That for us, I believe that it's scary because you're putting your life at risk each and every single day because you're dealing with humans that just don't want to change their behavior. And I mean, you can't drink and drive, and you can't take 2 weeks to submit a report. I think with because I'm in Lesotho currently, and I'll make a case study of it because we see it every day. I'm sorry about that. We get to experience it every day because this seems like a norm. And then the other part of it, we see accidents. And then we see the data collected, that sometimes the data collected really doesn't necessarily reflect what is actually happening on the ground. And that is the biggest issue because I'm in the space of research. If I go to to a relevant department to ask for certain statistics, and that department doesn't have it or doesn't have updated statistics, then that becomes a problem on its own, meaning what am I working on? So I think the psychological part of it and the psychological presentation that I did today with AI in the workplace comes from that point of view that in the workplace we experience a lot of challenges that I think some of you may be thinking about right now during this talk, that this is what is actually happening at my workplace. You know, we have issues such as ageism, where the older people will not want to work with the younger ones, you know. So there are a lot of issues that we find in the workplace that really cause or that really stop productivity or efficient performance. And I think that's how we need to look at AI, especially in the workplace. So, and then we have, like, if you can see from the image that I put there, we have scandals, we have lies, spying, revenge, rumors, enemies, you know, all of those things sometimes stem from a personal point of view that a lot of us need to stop doing, because you can't start putting in personal, you really can't start putting in personal issues in your work. And because of that, it lowers down the performance and productivity. So what I would like for us from this presentation is for us to engage, and perhaps if you have questions you can ask, but I would really like it for us to present a perspective that we have experienced in our different workplaces, that where we see this is where AI can fit, or this is how we see AI working for us. I am so sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening with my network. I don't know if it's on my side or the platform itself. And I know that this must have been really hard to listen to because of the echoes and all the other noise, the background noise around. But yes, so this is the end of my presentation. I'll just like to say that we need to have an open mind about AI in the workplace. It's really not a bad thing. We need to start taking accountability, and we need to start looking at ourselves at a human-to-human perspective of how we are contributing for AI to come, for us to birth AI. You know, I can't imagine a robot. I can't imagine going to an office or talking or setting up an office with, or setting a meeting or sitting in a meeting with a robot. Like that would be so creepy. That would be so creepy. But we are allowing ourselves to get there because we don't want to cooperate. We don't want to work together. We don't want to collaborate together. So that part and this perspective that I'm presenting today, it's because a lot of times when we talk of cybersecurity, when we talk of the cyberspace, we talk of the technical side of things. We don't talk on the human element of things, on how we are contributing to everything we're seeing today. So yes, thank you so much. This is the end of my presentations. And if you have questions, I'll answer them. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Rethabile, pour cette présentation. Alors, je voudrais savoir, est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Le principe sera exactement le même que pour professeur Asma Sbai. À savoir, vous levez votre main et ensuite vous allez prendre la parole.
Same as for Asma. In any case, the system's the same. Raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. I see that for now we don't have any questions, so I'd like to complete what's been said by Rethabile Tsephe, who's a specialist in her field. I think that AI isn't the problem. You know, sometimes it's humans that are behind the problems. I know in 2016, Microsoft launched a chatbot called Sbai. It took about several hours for Cady to become a robot, and it was saying misogynistic, racist things. And this is because the AI based its text on previous information that had been produced by humans. AIs don't understand good and evil, good and bad. They just focus and learn from human behavior. So if you have AI, they will base on different, like their thoughts on different political trends, for example. The difficulty is that AI doesn't have its own conscience, and programmers need to find a middle ground in programming, and that's really hard. For example, after the failure of Tai, Microsoft replaced it by another AI, I think. And Zoe, this new AI, was the opposite of Tai. So Tai had been given a lot of freedom, and it basically reflected the worst of humankind. And with Zoe, we had something that was almost too politically correct. It couldn't have discussions on certain topics. So it's difficult to find a middle ground. AI can be quite judgmental. With the second AI, we arrived at something that was acting politically correctly, but it still wasn't perfect because the robot couldn't have topics on certain topics, Middle East, the Torah, but the robot could talk about Christianity. So it kind of raised a debate. A lot of people felt like by trying to not have biased products, Microsoft wasn't able of creating an AI that would still be able to talk about anything. It was just omitting certain topics. And this kind of goes back to what Rethabile Tsephe was saying and Professor Asma Sbai. AI need a lot of regulations. The problem is that AI base themselves on content that's been produced by humans. And it depends on the content that is used. And it really depends on the quality and the amount of content that is used to train the AI. Thank you very much for this presentation, Rethabile. Does anyone have a question before we move on? I see that Atanas has a question. The floor is yours if you want to ask your question. Thank you very much. So my question is, for us who can choose, can we still choose? And what will the future look like when it comes to our children, our grandchildren who are 10? When we give them a machine that they're 8, 9, 10 years old and they have iPads and iPhones and screens, well, how will they judge all of this? Will they be able to make their mind up freely around all these AI questions? I hope you heard my question. Yes, we heard you. Rethabile? I don't know what's happening. I think Rethabile's connection might be unstable. Maybe she couldn't follow the question. Rethabile, are you there?
Yes, I am here, although I really didn't hear the question because of the network. It's really bad. I'm so sorry.
D'accord. Je vois que dans le chat, elle a écrit que
I see that in the chat, she said she had issues with her connection, so I think she's been logged out a couple times.
on passe au prochain speaker.
So she said that maybe we could move on to the next speaker and she will answer the questions at the end of the presentation.
Ok, merci beaucoup de-
Thank you very much for your understanding, Atanas. So we're going to now introduce our final speaker. I think it's a much awaited speaker and presentation. During the first presentation, there are already quite a few questions that touch on the financial aspects of AI. What happens for people who have jobs who can be replaced by AI? And this is why I'm glad we can have Winnie Ndjock with us today. She's a designer, a graphic designer, and it's a job that can potentially be threatened by AI. Because AI can be used to generate 3D illustrations, for example. So she has multiple years of experience in design, marketing, IT. So Winnie Ndjock is going to tell you about her experience in marketing and design linked to the increase of AI. Winnie Ndjock, the floor is yours. Hi, everyone. I don't know if I can turn my camera on. I was worried that my Wi-Fi connection might not survive. Maybe don't turn your camera on and we can see your slides perfectly. So I'm Winnie Ndjock. As I've been introduced, I'm a designer, graphic designer, or infographic designer, depending on the term you prefer. I focus on using generative AI for content creation and how this can be used in digital marketing and different types of marketing. One second, please.
So I'm going to be talking about AI and how we can use it to achieve our different objectives. I think we can try and move on. So I concentrate on IA in the creation of content, which is more text and pictures. And it's especially with this kind of AIs that they've become very popular in the last few months, because ChatGPT, for example, allows you to create content, articles, reports, etc. And when we talk about other AIs, it's because they're able to create visuals. So we have certain AIs that can create videos, which is a bit more complex, and other domains that we can talk about later. In this presentation, I would like to tell you about the stakes linked to the use of AI, because they exist, and so we need to work with them. And I also want to consider the opportunities and the risks that are linked to these AIs in the sector of design and content creation. So here, for example, you can see what we're able to do in terms of content creation today. So this is what is going to be generated the most often. That is to say, if many people like to use Midjourney, for example, to create funny photos, for example, the Pope dancing or doing a rock concert, or a president participating in a riot, a lot actually use these AIs in their work to be able to generate commercially used photos. So, for example, you can see these two pictures. who could be used by a company, be they in the sector of fashion or services, because what's often a problem with companies who want to produce content, especially those that are based in African countries, well, often they don't have content that is representative. So stock photos, for example, are quite rare. And it's going to be the same photos over and over. And, you know, when you're planning an ad campaign, you're going to use that a same photo is going to be used by 20, 30 different companies that are all aiming for the same target. And so that sometimes actually leads to campaigns of, you know, people making fun of these companies. And so AI allows us to create images that are maybe more personal, by integrating certain requests, for example. So you see that on the photo with the young woman here. So you can have representations of what our target audience is expecting, but we can also do that in terms of products. So you can see that for the bag. So this bag does not exist, but it can be used for a marketing campaign for a company, for example, who wants to integrate certain personal touches into their design. But it can also be used by people who want to make use of this technology to commit fraud or cheat. So, for example, if I put this photo of a bag on a sales website, well, no one would be able to tell that this bag is a fake. It has been generated by an AI. Because when we're talking about these images that are generated by AIs, we can see people who have maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 arms, who have 2 or 3 eyes. But you can see that actually it's getting better and better. So previously, the photo of this young woman would not have been as good. You would have seen absolutely abominable things. But it's improved really, really quickly in the space of 2 months, in fact. You also have the possibility of really refining the style of the creation. So, for example, in the first photo, you give a prompt saying that you want a young man who's dressed in a red jumper and a gray trouser. Well, the result that you're going to have is going to be quite approximate. It's not going to be professional looking. If you want to produce something really professional looking, then you need to have the background. And so I want to actually agree with the interventions that came before me, where we talked about producing a prompt that can actually only be produced by someone who has a certain mastery, a certain level of competence in the domain in which they're trying to produce content. So it can't just be any old newcomer. So, for example, for creating a picture, if you don't know anything about designing an ad and you just request an image of a person, well, the result cannot be used in a campaign. You might be able to use it as a funny joke or maybe in a small publication that you're going to be posting on Facebook. But if you want a result that is of professional quality that you can use in an advertising campaign, especially in a bigger company, you need not only to know what you're hoping to see represented, but you also need to know the techniques that underlie this work. So, for example, in the 2 first pictures that are photos, I asked that these images be produced in a certain style for an ad campaign, so with a very specific style. I had to ask for camera specifications, for certain types of lenses, certain types of angles, and lighting as well. I had to specify lighting. And so I request these specific characteristics because I know where my text is going to go as well. And so someone who doesn't know how this works, well, they're going to produce pictures that actually are not going to look very good. And on the last one, for example, you can see that this is an illustration. And it shows that we don't only have to make photos of very realistic looking images, but we can use styles that are inspired by other artists. So, for example, in Midjourney, you can cite specifically an artist that you want to be using the style of. And I think that actually makes a lot of artists quite angry, because we can say, I would like an illustration of a woman who's dressed in a certain kind of dress and have African print, and this print should be geometric. I want her to be sat down in expressive position, and I want her to be represented in the style of such and such artist. And you can even ask for a mix. I want to see shapes similar to this artist, but with a style of lighting that you would be able to see in another artist. And Midjourney will be able to create a quite interesting mix of these two different styles that you've specified. You have another application of AI, which is quite extraordinary for Midjourney. I'm actually specialized in Midjourney. The other AIs I don't use so much. But when you find a tool that you can really master, it's better to stick with that one. So here, for example, because I often do photo collages, and then I need to be able to put certain persons in the photos. So I must say that, you know, finding African-looking backgrounds is very difficult. So on Google, you will not find a lot of images. And you can't really, you know, use Google or Pinterest to crowdsource these images, because these images don't belong to you. They belong to the original creators. But what you can do, thanks to Midjourney, is to create an environment, a background that will allow us to really center a person, a message, excuse me, as is the case for the company that you're presenting. And the result can be quite unexpected, because for the second photo, which shows the architecture, I'd simply asked, and I used some quite technical terms, but the result is always quite surprising. So I asked the inside of a palace, which could be the palace of an African people. Who would be the princes of a tropical forest, and is on two floors, and the supported by columns that are engraved. And then the results that come out, you don't really expect what comes out. But here I used a very precise inspiration. I want a typical architectural inspiration of such and such architect or such and such a period. For those who are wondering how you can really monetize these visuals, well, this is an option for a lot of people who use Midjourney. So they, for example, use Midjourney to generate virtual spaces and backgrounds. So many designers, like me, are good enough to create the characters, or maybe create photo collages, but to really create a background like you're seeing on the screen, that will take several hours. That means that if I needed to reproduce, for example, the castle with all these details that I showed you in the previous slide, I would need over 20 hours to do that. But if I need more than 20 hours, that's going to be a problem for me in terms of timescales. And the client can't pay that much money for that workload. The client would not be able to pay for my time and the time that would have been necessary to the 20 hours that would be necessary to illustrate that castle. And so if we're talking about landscapes, it gets even more problematic. You know, a landscape like what you can see on the screen, it can take over 60 hours just to produce that illustration. And then the client can ask for certain adjustments, especially for the colors, and that really becomes a problem. So here you see what I prefer, and that's the generation of characters and backgrounds. So I use a lot of characters, and at the beginning I used to design them myself. Using M Carousel, I could maybe generate over 5 or 10 hours certain characters and variations on their expressions, their positions, before finding what I liked and what I could really use on a lot of carousels. Today, it's a lot more simple. Either I draw a base of my character and then ask Midjourney to modify it, or I just request a certain style, and Midjourney is going to completely create that for me. And since I've been working a lot on games recently, I want to create 3D characters that can either be directly used or be suggested to a company who are going to use them as a base, or create characters on which they're going to have rights. And that's a big problem at the moment, because we can't really say if there are any rights that are applied to this content. Can we really copyright or place copyrights on these characters that are created through Midjourney? We're not sure, because we can integrate them into these different spaces and backgrounds, and we can transform them. So here we have another example of something that I've done. So on the left, we have a character that I drew. So I drew it very quickly, just as an illustration. It allows me to give a bit more body to videos and messages. But then I realized that I could ask Midjourney to transform these drawings and to make them a little bit more pleasant, a bit more aesthetically satisfying. So this is an option that you can use as a designer to go faster. So you create a basic character, a basic illustration, and then you use Midjourney, and the software is then going to improve your basic drawing. So here I kind of enumerate the opportunities presented by AI in design. I don't know if you can understand me well. My throat is very sore. So these are the opportunities that are linked to AI use in design. I'm trying to speed up. So it means that you can generate ideas very quickly. It's something that you do a lot with clients. And you can actually spend 2 to 3 weeks looking for ideas, testing things out. But by using Midjourney, I tend to concentrate on these things for maybe a day. And instead of presenting 3 propositions to the client, I have maybe 20 of them. And if the client doesn't like, I can keep introducing new ideas. But generally, we only arrive to 3 or 4 between the first and second waves of proposals. And the person is already going to be able to find what they like. And from there, I can more easily draw what is expected of me. There's also the possibility of creating very quick prototypes. That's been the case for watches. Someone asked me, for example, to think on the possibility of creating watches with certain patterns. And currently I'm working on games that use artwork and maps. And I use Midjourney. So instead of trawling through stock image sites and websites from illustrators, I use Midjourney straight away. And within an hour, I have tens of dozens of simulated maps. And then I can present these again to the client who's going to choose. I can also produce learning materials. That's what I've been doing with an association. So we create characters, we create backgrounds, we create certain elements that can be used for these commercial videos, but can also be used for printed materials. So for example, if you're creating a textbook and that needs to be illustrated, then you can use that. Obviously, if you don't know anything about graphic design, you can't just say, I'm going to use Midjourney. You should go through a person who knows how to use these AIs. And this person will be able to generate the objects needed, the decorative elements, and that will allow you to create a library. And this library will be completely adequate for perhaps one project, or it can be used across several. It also reduces cost for graphic research, because instead of spending 2 weeks on social media, poring over books, and maybe even looking through film videos, you can index different content and then suggest something interesting. What are the risks? Well, of course, there's this risk of the loss of the human touch in design. When we look at what Midjourney is able to do in terms of illustrations, no one's going to be able to say, I can't really feel the emotion that a human-generated image would have produced. You don't really realize, you can't tell the difference. And there are a lot of designs, you know, today, when you say that this is made by an AI, no one would really know, except for photos. Photos always have something that allow you to tell the difference, especially when they have a slightly fantastical bent. But in drawings and illustrations, it's not possible. It's so good at copying the style of real artists and illustrators that we actually put the emotion in by interpreting the picture, especially when the emotion is requested by the person who inputs the prompt. There are also biases and prejudice present in these algorithms. So for example, when I used Midjourney at the beginning, when you say, you know, produce an African man wearing a costume, well, it actually produced a monkey. And when you asked for big African cities, it actually produced villages. So villages with chimneys or with sliding windows. But when you put modern African cities, then you wouldn't actually get good results. But today it's changed. When you ask for that kind of thing today, well, it produces much better results. And, you know, people will be able to tell that this is an actual or real-looking African city. But there are many other prejudices that exist, and we need to be really careful with the idea of couples, families, anything that touches on childhood. The way we see couples, families, etc., is really going to depend on the target. And if the AI is trained by a certain group of people, by a certain culture, to generate a certain type of illustration or photos, well, that's the result that the AI is going to produce, regardless of the prompt. Now, is AI a threat to creative jobs? Well, yes, but I think it's mostly a threat to those who refuse to evolve, and it's a threat for the people who limit themselves. So, for example, when you work as a graphic designer, you have a whole generation of professionals who never learned the basics of infographics and digital design. They don't have principles of design. And these people will not be able to use Midjourney correctly. They will only be able to input very basic prompts, or prompts that would have been input by the client, for example, but they're not really able to produce a composition that is adapted to a certain ad campaign, a certain subject, etc. So they're going to need to train to be able to keep their ability to work in this sector. But there are certain jobs, like, for example, voiceovers, that are going to be impacted because there are certain AIs, such as Muff AI, which I tested, that give absolutely fantastic voiceovers. It really is extraordinary. And these voices are sometimes so realistic. They really, have nothing to do with the content produced by free AIs, but you can hear the pronunciation and the intonation even. They're perfect. Things that you can't imagine a robot doing. But because the robot knows that that's what he's supposed to do, then it will do it. And especially if you give it prompts as to when it should pause, when it should speed up, when it should sound scared, when it should sound surprised or happy, well, the AI is going to adapt. And so, yes, I do think that in terms of voiceovers, this profession that is emerging really in African countries is going to run into serious trouble. But it's still, it's not necessarily very widely used. It's still very expensive. But there is the risk that cost is actually going to go down with time. And so it'd be important that maybe this, voiceover sector, well, maybe they won't be able to do adverts anymore, but people will still be doing, films or series, etc., that maybe with time will also pick up and be produced more massively. I think we've already really talked about this, touching on the lies and the fact that generative AIs need restrictions because AIs like ChatGPT or Midjourney can allow you to propagate false rumors. You can implement disinformation strategies, and that's been used. That's happened with ChatGPT. But with other AIs, I tried to simulate scenarios to maybe generate a bad buzz or a scandal around a person. And it gives you, content that would allow you to really damage someone's reputation. So when you ask it, you shouldn't ask, make it to do a buzz, but you can ask the AI to follow a very negative scenario, and then it will generate something that's really wide. And that can be really, really dangerous because a tool can say this is the biggest threat that could cause a problem for someone. So, for example, ChatGPT could generate that for you, and then you could go to Midjourney and request what kind of content would be necessary to create that kind of scandal. And that's what I did. I said, what kind of images would be necessary for that, and then the AI described what would have the most impact. and suggested where it should be propagated. And then on Midjourney, you can recreate these things. You can recreate a background, a situation, maybe not the person's face because the AI can't really do that. But then you flip over into Intergraph and you can do whatever you want. And so you can have, obviously you can see collages that are helped propagate fake news before AI, but it really is reinforcing competences that already existed. And so that's why I want to come back to this point and say that generative AIs can be put in collaboration. So, for example, I use an AI that generates titles, another one that generates more detailed content, another AI to generate visuals. And so I use these two AIs mostly to give myself ideas. But I think some people actually push this collaboration quite far. And I think this could be a model actually for people who are content creators. But I don't think we should maybe bow down too far to people who've completely automated their content creation. So I want to close by saying that we need to evolve. We can't stop, and we can't just say that we're not going to use these AIs. We do need to use them. But we can try to create certain versions, certain alternatives. And we need to regulate. So, for example, artists, for the artists whose work is used to create AI-generated content should be remunerated. Because when we say that ChatGPT gives you a text, it doesn't invent it. It drew from different sources. Humans are forced to attribute or to give credit for our content, but AIs don't do that. They just formulate content, and that's it. You haven't produced anything. Not only have you not produced anything, but you have not recognized the sources of your work, and you haven't been honest about where it came from, where this content was produced from. So I think I hope I wasn't too long. And that's it for my presentation. It was concentrated on design.
Thank you very much for this presentation, Ms. Ndjock. I wanted to see if anyone had any further questions. Régine, I see your hands up. You've got the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Winnie, for your presentation. It was very, very enlightening. Thank you for this webinar. It has taught us a lot. My question, I don't know if you can answer it, but what I'm wondering is, you say that we shouldn't prevent, we should evolve and control, but when I try and observe what's happening for us, for example, in Africa, and Black Africa in particular, we see a certain generalization. We see all the tools. We see what they can bring us, the internet, all these tools, and when we need to control, we need a framework. And unfortunately, when it comes to text, legal text, acts, and things that can create this framework to prevent issues, I think there's a problem. There's no adequate evolution between frameworks and control measures and the way things are evolving. how the tools are evolving. And unfortunately, the problem, I think, is that the use, the way we use these tools is often negative. I think it destroys part of our society. Shouldn't we maybe stop and think and try and slow things down? Here we are, and we're saying, should we, slow things down? And people say, no, we have to evolve, we have to keep going. Yes, but control measures aren't keeping up. I think the EU and other big organizations, they can't necessarily keep up, because the people who've created things don't even necessarily understand what they're creating and the impact that their creations will have. And we don't understand the consequences of some creations. And some creations have been badly used. There's been a great misuse of certain technologies and evolutions. And I think we need to raise awareness, but that's not enough. What is negative is the misuse that can be done. I'm really concerned regarding the future, especially here in Africa. Especially with this issue of evolution and proliferation of all these tools, all these innovations, all these intelligent technologies, and that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you very much. I understand your problem. And here I would like to say, as a content creator, I spend my time asking African people to be careful, because a lot of people say we Africans use these tools poorly. But it's not just us. The websites that create misinformation, fake news, are not African websites, aren't always African people. The majority, the more powerful ones, are not based in Africa. People tell you about units, these organizations who create fake news and try and create negative campaigns. For example, when Black Panther came out, we realized that as soon as we try and do Black Panther research, you ended up on Planet of the Apes. And a lot of people associated Black Panther to apes. So let's remember that we do not want to create something that is evil or bad. We want to create something that is good. But obviously, when something is bad or evil or has problems, we talk about it more. So as soon as something is misused, it's going to be talked about much more than if it is well used. So initially, when I was doing research via Pinterest or things like that, or if I wanted to see Black illustrators, I had to spend hours and hours looking for this content. And if I ended up finding something, I would sometimes find just fashion posters for certain countries. But on Pinterest now, if you say Black character, African person, there's a new wave of content. And we need waves of positive content so that there's a presence on Pinterest, on TikTok, on YouTube. People have created channels, stories that are much more complete and show African or Afro descendants in a positive light, be it scientists, hunters, mages, wizards. There's positive representations. I think now if you put a prompt on IA, it's self-fed. So we need to keep feeding it, and then it feeds itself because there's more and more positive content. So we need Afro positivity. And when you touch upon, for example, images, pictures that can be used by Midjourney for propaganda, I've seen hundreds of them that were used by some people, but also people in France, people in other countries. But when you see what Africans generate, content-wise, the pictures are people taking selfies, people in fields, people doing big things. So obviously, yes, there will be negative points, but I can tell you the most negative content created does not come from us. It doesn't originate in Africa. And I hope that we can see more positive representation. African people creating content seem to create more representative content. If you had to ask people like me to create content without using AI, we wouldn't be able to keep up. So that's why when people say don't use AI, I say, well, no, I use it, but I'm careful. And you also need to know that someone isn't necessarily going to create a whole comic strip using Midjourney. But it gives you opportunities. It gives us a chance to massively create content. And I have started creating much more content since I've started using Midjourney. There were projects that I'd stopped and I've picked up again and resumed because I have Midjourney. There are two people who wanted to create albums, and I worked with them. At present, because we have these opportunities, more and more people are trying to create something, and that something is positive. When it comes to regulations, I'd say a lot of people are stuck. They don't really know how to regulate all of this. So I think it's a topic that we need to discuss. It's a game, you know. We're using these tools, we're playing around with them, but I'm not using all the different tools at a professional level. Some people on Midjourney can do wondrous things. And it's because they've also got professional experience, professional expertise, skills that they can then apply to their use of Midjourney. I'd like also to mention that all the creations have a downside. So everything has a downside, you know, nuclear energy can feed a city, provide electricity, but it can also be used to kill. So I just think we need to seize the opportunities. Content creation is expensive, and contrary to others, we don't have, we don't all start at the same point, and I think we need to make use of the tools that are available to us. Thank you very much, Winnie Ndjock. I see that Atanas has his hand up. We've got other people with their hands up, but because of time constraints, I think what we'll do, maybe you could all pop your emails in the chat box, and the participants can then send you their questions by chat. There's been a question in the chat. How do you think regulations, rules could prevent certain issues? I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat, please? So the question was, how do you think regulations can prevent certain phenomena like fake news created using AI? Well, Midjourney received certain bans. It cannot represent certain people, certain brands. So if you put in a prompt for that, then that theme has been banned. And if you try and bypass that, then it will block you or log you out. So that's a possibility. And just like they did with this, certain companies, for example, aren't allowed to contact you via email or to phone you. Well, it's the same thing here. Like there's a subscription to newsletters. Here, people could say, okay, that there's the people who are protected. They cannot be represented using this AI. So you can't have heads of state or certain brands or things connected to such and such topic. So we could put in something like that in place. But I don't know what led them to put this in place. Was it something that came from them? Were they paid to do this? I know there's a brand, Victoria's Secret. In February, I'd created a lot of content, and it was pictures with women in underwear, and I'd asked for the AI to use catwalks from fashion shows for women from Victoria's Secret. I wanted lingerie and wings, and I needed this. And I tried to generate this recently because I needed to modify a picture that I had used, and I was told that Victoria's Secret was now banned. I think it was the same thing for the Chinese president, Xi Jinping. I think there was that one, and he's part of the people that cannot be used by the AI. So I don't know where these bans come from. If it was Americans, we probably couldn't have illustrations with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So maybe that's where it comes from, but maybe we need a law that specifically says you're not allowed to represent certain people, such as politicians, or you can't represent certain people who are well known. And if there's a mix, then maybe you could take a picture and you can transform it, and you can see a lot of AIs do that. They take your pictures and they turn you into something else. But you've given your consent. You've given AI permission to record your face and transform it. But there might be possibilities for someone else to not have their face used. But I don't think that's going to happen just now. So at the moment, you could probably just prevent someone from using public personalities and prevent scandals or fake news or saying this person was seen here or there, because that could have a serious impact on certain types of people. So I think that's where maybe rules could be used to prevent certain things. Some people who create montages with children stuck under rubble, and then this was used in newspapers who used it and said, here, these are people who have been abandoned during war periods, and people didn't realize that this wasn't real. There's different buttons, there's hair in different weird places. So if you start paying attention to the details, you'll realize it's maybe AI generated. But if you don't pay attention to the finer details, then you may not realize that this is a completely created image. I think it will be more and more difficult to prevent the creation of such images. I think each platform, newspapers, should put in place something to detect fake images or images that have been, photoshopped or modified using AI. Something like an app that could tell you that this has been AI generated, for example. So at the start, I think there might be mistakes, errors, but if we start right now, with time, I think we would be able to create such types of tools, and this could lead to better protection. Thank you very much. So with this final answer, We are now going to close our webinar on the role of AI in the professional field. You have got various sets of information and different links in the chat. You will be able to access the recording to this webinar if you wish to do so. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach back out to our different panelists today, be it via email or on the Internet Society's website. Thank you very much. Thank you for your participation, for being here. Thank you to our three panelists, Professor Asma Sbai, Rethabile Tsephe, and Winnie Ndjock. Have a lovely evening, and I hope to all see you soon. Thank you very much.